Ready to decode the mysteries of power dressing. We're going deep into dressing for success.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah, we'll go from its surprising origins to some tips that might make you laugh or maybe cringe a little.
Ooh, I'm intrigued.
You gave us two great sources for this deep dive. We're going to start with the Wikipedia entry for the 1975 bestseller, Dress for Success.
Okay.
That's the book that really put this whole concept on the map.
Yeah.
Then we'll time travel to the 70s with a fun Into the Gloss article.
Okay.
It dissects advice from the sequel, the Women's Dress for Success book. Get ready for some serious fashion flashbacks.
Oh my gosh, I'm ready.
This Wikipedia entry is a goldmine. It talks about how John T. Molloy, the author, actually used research and drawings to figure out how people perceive different clothing styles.
Wow.
He was like the OG data scientist of fashion. What do you think of that approach?
That is fascinating. Yeah, I think it's brilliant because he wasn't just relying on his own opinions or, what he thought looked good. He was trying to understand the psychology behind clothing and how it influences people's perceptions, especially in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
His main idea was that you should dress to blend in with the higher-ups.
Oh, interesting.
Because, like it or not, people make snap judgments based on appearance.
So it's all about that first impression.
Absolutely.
Making sure you fit the mold.
Yeah.
But then the Into the Gloss article jumps in with all these specific do's and don'ts from the 70s.
Right.
They are so specific and, well, kind of hilarious now.
I love it.
Like Molloy was all about the skirt suits and attaché cases. Very boardroom chic.
Yeah, classic.
But peasant dresses? Corduroy, absolutely not. It makes you wonder if he ever relaxed.
I know. So it's really interesting to see how those recommendations reflect the corporate culture at the time.
Right.
The skirt suit was like a uniform.
Mm-hmm.
It projected authority and seriousness in a traditional office setting.
Uh-huh.
But things like peasant dresses had these free-spirited, maybe even rebellious connotations.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't have flown in those buttoned-up environments.
It's like he's saying conform or be cast out.
Mm-hmm.
But some of his other advice is just plain funny. He had a whole thing against mittens,
Oh, really?
He said no young lady over 10 should wear them. What do you think that was about? Was it just a formality thing? Or was there something else going on?
It's so funny. I think it might touch on this idea of women being seen as competent and professional. Because mittens maybe had this playful or childlike connotation that he felt didn't fit the image of a serious businesswoman
Right.
at the time. He wanted women to be taken seriously in a very male-dominated workplace, and to him, mittens just didn't project that.
It was all about projecting this image of I'm here to do business, don't mess with me. Which is interesting because he also had a lot to say about makeup. Apparently men loved it, but only if they couldn't tell you were wearing any. Talk about a tricky balance.
Oh, I know, right? This gets into some tricky territory, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it really shows the pressure on women to conform to certain beauty standards.
Right.
While also appearing effortless. It's like they were supposed to be attractive, but not distracting.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty tough needle to thread.
It really is. Okay, so we're seeing some cracks in this dressing for success idea already. But before we go full fashion rebellion, let's be fair to Molloy.
Yeah.
Do you think any of his advice still holds up today? Or has it all gone the way of the attaché case?
I think the underlying principle of understanding your workplace culture and dressing to fit in is still very relevant. It's about showing respect for that environment.
Right.
And adapting to the norms of a particular industry or company.
Yeah.
But the specific rules have definitely changed. What was once considered power dressing might be seen as outdated, even inappropriate today.
I mean, can you imagine showing up to a tech startup in a stiff skirt suit and heels?
Oh, gosh, no.
I'd probably get some strange looks.
Yeah, I think so.
So how do we even define dressing for success today?
Right.
It can't just be about following these outdated rules.
Right. It's not about following a rigid set of rules anymore. It's more about understanding how our clothing choices contribute to our overall message and image. It's about using clothing as a tool for self-expression and communication. What stands out to you about that?
Oh, wow.
I think what's fascinating about that is it really flips the script on how we think about dressing for success. It's no longer about adhering to, a strict dress code.
Right.
but about being strategic and intentional with our choices.
Right.
It's like we're taking ownership of our image and using clothing as a tool to project the best version of ourselves.
So instead of just fitting in,
Mm-hmm.
we're using clothing to actually stand out and make a statement.
Right.
But how do we balance that
Yeah.
with the idea of being authentic?
Right.
We don't want to feel like we're putting on a costume every
But
morning.
you've hit on a key point. It's about finding that sweet spot between self-expression
Mm,
and awareness of your context.
right.
It's about aligning your personal style with the environment you're in.
Okay.
You can be true to yourself while also considering the message you want to convey in a particular setting.
So it's like if I'm going to a creative agency,
Mm-hmm.
I can let my funky side out a little bit.
Yeah.
But if I'm meeting with a bank for a loan,
Right.
maybe I tone it down and go for something more classic.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's about being adaptable and recognizing that different situations call for different approaches.
So we're code switching with our clothing choices.
You got code switching with clothes.
I like that.
It makes it sound a lot less intimidating.
Yeah. But let's be real.
Okay.
First impressions matter. Even if we don't want to admit it,
Yeah.
we do judge people based on what they wear,
Absolutely.
don't we?
Visual communication is powerful.
Yeah.
It's like this shortcut that our brains use to make sense of the world. And clothing is a big part of that visual language.
Right.
It's not about being superficial,
Right.
but recognizing that those first impressions can really shape how people perceive us.
Okay, so we can't just ignore those judgments,
Right.
but we can be aware of them and use them to our advantage.
Exactly.
You mentioned personal branding earlier.
Yeah.
How does that play into all this?
Yeah.
Is it like creating a visual identity for ourselves?
Uh-huh.
Through clothing.
You got it.
Okay.
Think of your personal brand as the image you project to the world,
Mm,
both online and offline.
right.
It's about the qualities you want to be known for,
Yeah.
the values you embody,
Right.
the message you want to send,
Mm-hmm.
and clothing can be a powerful tool to communicate that brand.
So it's not just about looking good.
Mm-hmm.
It's about strategically using clothing to reinforce those qualities.
Yes.
So if someone wants to be seen as confident and competent,
Mm-hmm.
how would they translate that into their clothing choices?
It's not necessarily about specific items,
Right.
but about the overall impression you create.
Mm-hmm.
Well-fitting clothes, quality fabrics,
Right.
and attention to detail can all contribute to a more polished and professional look.
Yeah.
It's about choosing clothes that make you feel good and that elevate your presence.
So it's more about the fit and the feel than just chasing after designer labels or trends.
Exactly.
I get it.
Mm-hmm.
But what about color?
Yeah,
Does that play a role in personal branding too?
absolutely.
Okay.
Color can have a huge impact on how we perceive people
Mm-hmm.
and how we feel ourselves.
Right.
Certain colors evoke specific emotions and associations.
Yeah.
For example, blue is often associated with trustworthiness and competence,
Interesting.
while red can convey energy and passion.
So you could actually use color strategically,
Mm-hmm.
depending on the image you want to project.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's like adding another layer of meaning to your outfit.
This is starting to feel less like rigid rules
Mm-hmm.
and more like a fun way to express myself.
I love that.
I never thought I'd see dressing for success as a form of self-expression.
It's about shifting the perspective.
Right.
When you approach it from a standpoint of, personal branding and authentic self-expression,
Yeah.
it becomes much more engaging.
Hmm.
You're not just following a formula, you're crafting your own unique style.
It's like turning those old rules
Yeah.
into guidelines,
Mm-hmm.
like a roadmap instead of a strict itinerary. You get to choose your own adventure.
I love that.
But let's go back to Molloy's research for a second.
Okay.
He was talking about this idea of subconscious judgment.
Yeah.
Do you think that still applies today,
Mm.
even if the specific clothing recommendations are outdated?
Yeah, I think it's important to acknowledge that our brains are wired to make quick judgments
Mm-hmm.
based on visual cues.
Right.
And clothing is part of that.
Yeah.
It's not about being superficial,
Right.
but about recognizing that perception plays a role in human interaction.
So even if we don't realize it,
Mm-hmm.
what we're wearing is sending a message.
Yeah,
And that message might be different depending on who we're talking to
right.
and where we are.
Precisely.
Okay.
It's like we're constantly communicating
Hmm.
through our clothing choices.
Right.
Whether we intend to or not.
So how do we navigate all of this?
Mm-hmm.
How do we find that balance between fitting in and standing out?
Right.
It feels like a lot to juggle.
You're right. It can feel overwhelming.
Yeah.
But there are some practical tips that can help you navigate those tricky situations.
Okay.
For example, let's say you're starting a new job
Okay.
or going to a networking event where you want to make a good first impression.
Mm-hmm.
What would you do?
Oh, let's see. I would probably try to research the company culture
Mm-hmm.
or the event dress code beforehand.
Right.
Get a sense of what's appropriate
Yeah.
and what people typically wear.
That's a great starting point. It's all about gathering information and tailoring your approach accordingly.
Mm.
You want to strike that balance between blending in and showcasing your personality.
So I'm not trying to completely disappear into the background,
Yeah.
but I'm also not showing up in a sequined jumpsuit when everyone else is in business casual.
Exactly.
Right.
It's about reading the room and choosing an outfit that aligns with the tone and expectations of the situation.
Right.
You're showcasing your style while still respecting the context.
Okay, I'm getting it.
Mm.
So it's like a combination of research, self-awareness,
Yeah,
and a little bit of strategic thinking.
that's a great way to put it.
Okay.
It's about being intentional with your choices
Mm-hmm.
and recognizing that clothing can be a powerful tool to enhance your personal brand
Yeah.
and create a positive impact.
So instead of feeling restricted by all these rules,
Mm-hmm.
we can actually use them to our advantage.
Right.
We can choose to express ourselves in a way that feels both authentic and appropriate.
Exactly. Right.
It's about taking ownership of your image
Mm-hmm.
and using it to communicate effectively. You're essentially curating your own visual story.
I like that.
Mhm.
Curating your own visual story. It makes fashion sound like an art form,
Yeah.
which I guess it is in a way.
It definitely is.
Okay.
It's about expressing yourself creatively
Mm-hmm.
while also considering the message you're conveying to the world.
But wait a minute.
Okay.
We've been talking a lot about fitting in and making a good impression.
Right.
But what about those times when you actually want to stand out?
Yeah.
What about expressing your individuality?
That's where personal style comes into play.
Okay.
It's about those unique elements
Right.
that make your look distinctly you.
Mm-hmm.
It's about finding those pieces that reflect your personality
Right.
and make you feel confident and comfortable.
So it's not about completely throwing out the rule book,
Right.
but about adding your own flair.
Exactly.
Right.
It's about finding that balance.
Mhm. Between expressing your individuality and understanding the context,
Okay.
it's about making those rules work for you, not against you.
So it's like taking those basic guidelines
Mm-hmm.
and then adding your own signature style on top of them.
Right.
You're not just conforming, you're creating something unique.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's about showcasing your personality through your clothing choices
Mm-hmm.
and allowing those unique elements to shine through. What do you think about that?
I'm all for it.
Yeah.
It's like finally having permission to express myself
Mm-hmm.
through fashion
Yeah.
without feeling like I'm breaking all the rules.
Right.
But hold on a second.
Okay.
We talked about how Molloy had some pretty strong opinions
Mm-hmm.
on certain types of clothing.
Yeah.
Remember that whole rant about sweaters being lower middle class
Oh,
and
yeah.
giving off these loser vibes?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, I love a good sweater.
Right.
And I definitely don't consider myself a loser.
It's a classic example
Yeah.
of how certain garments become associated with specific social groups
Right.
and stereotypes.
Mhm.
And it highlights how powerful those perceptions can be,
Yeah.
even if they're not based in reality.
So I think it's safe to say we can take Molloy's sweater aversion with a grain of salt.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that while his research provided valuable insights into perception,
Mm-hmm.
it's also essential to recognize that these interpretations can be subjective
Yeah.
and change over time.
Right.
What was once considered frumpy might be fashionable today.
So fashion is fluid
Mm-hmm.
and evolving.
Absolutely.
What's considered in or out is constantly changing.
Right.
It's like trying to hit a moving target.
It's true.
Yeah.
And that's why it's more important than ever to focus on developing your personal style.
Mhm.
Something that feels authentic to you and that transcends fleeting trends.
So instead of chasing after every fad,
Right.
we should be building a wardrobe
Mm-hmm.
that reflects our personality and our values.
Yeah.
Clothes that make us feel good and that we can wear with confidence,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of what's in at the moment.
Precisely.
Right.
It's about shifting your focus from external validation
Mm-hmm.
to internal satisfaction.
Right.
It's about finding your own unique style
Yeah.
and owning it.
Okay. I'm feeling empowered,
Great.
but I have to admit, sometimes I get overwhelmed by all the choices.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much pressure to look a certain way,
Right.
to have the perfect outfit for every occasion.
Yeah.
It can be exhausting.
I understand completely. It's easy to get caught up in the pressure to conform,
Right.
especially with social media constantly bombarding us
Oh, yeah.
with images of what we should be wearing.
So how do we navigate that pressure?
Mm-hmm.
How do we find our own style without getting lost in the sea of trends
Yeah.
and expectations?
It starts with self-awareness.
Okay.
It's about taking a step back and really thinking about what you like,
Mm-hmm.
what makes you feel good, what reflects your personality
Yeah.
and your lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
It's about tuning out the noise and listening to your own inner voice.
So it's like instead of trying to be someone else's version of perfect,
Mm.
we're defining what perfect means for ourselves.
Exactly.
I like
It's
that.
about embracing your individuality and expressing it through your clothing choices.
Right.
It's about owning your style
Mm-hmm.
and celebrating your unique quirks.
That sounds a lot more fun
Yeah.
than trying to keep up with the Kardashians.
Yeah, absolutely.
But let's be real, clothes can be expensive,
Mm-hmm.
and building a sustainable wardrobe that reflects our values can feel like a challenge.
That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
And it brings up an important question that I think is especially relevant today.
Mm-hmm.
What about the sustainability of dressing for success?
Oh, that's a great point.
You know, we're becoming more aware of the environmental impact
Mm-hmm.
of the fashion industry.
Right.
So how do we reconcile that with the desire to look good and feel confident?
So how do we dress for success in a way that's both stylish and sustainable?
Right.
Is that even possible?
It's definitely a challenge.
Yeah.
But it's not impossible.
Okay.
It requires a shift in mindset
Right.
and a willingness to make more conscious choices.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of constantly buying new clothes for every occasion,
Right.
we can focus on building a more versatile
Yeah.
and sustainable wardrobe that will last longer.
So it's about quality over quantity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about choosing clothes that will stand the test of time, both in terms of style and durability.
Right.
Think about those classic pieces that never go out of style,
Yeah.
like a well-tailored blazer, a crisp white shirt,
Mm-hmm.
or a great pair of jeans.
Those are the workhorses of any wardrobe.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But what about those trendier pieces?
Yeah,
I mean, it's fun to experiment with different styles.
absolutely.
Right.
And there are ways to do that sustainably.
Okay.
You can try thrifting or buying secondhand clothes,
Mm-hmm.
which is a great way to give clothes a second life and to find unique pieces without contributing to the demand for new production.
So it's like instead of contributing to the fast fashion cycle,
Mm-hmm.
we're giving those pre-loved clothes a new home.
Exactly.
Right.
It's a win-win.
Okay.
And there are so many amazing vintage and consignment stores out there.
Mhm.
You can find incredible pieces for a fraction of the cost.
Yeah.
And you're helping to reduce textile waste.
Okay. That's actually exciting.
Yeah.
It's like a treasure hunt for sustainable style.
I love that.
But what about those times when you really need something new?
Mm-hmm.
Like for a special occasion or a job interview?
You know, there are brands that are focusing on sustainability
Hmm.
and ethical production practices.
Okay.
They're using eco-friendly fabrics,
Okay.
paying their workers fair wages,
Mm-hmm.
and minimizing their environmental impact.
Yeah.
So you can still buy new clothes,
Oh, okay.
but you can do it in a way that aligns with your values.
So it's about doing your research and supporting brands that are making a difference. It's like voting with your wallet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have the power to choose where you spend your money
Hmm.
and to support companies that are committed
Right.
to ethical and sustainable practices.
It feels good to know that I can still enjoy fashion
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
while also making responsible choices.
Right.
But let's be honest, it can be tough to break old habits.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm so used to just popping into a store
Yeah,
and buying whatever catches my eye.
I hear you.
Yeah.
It takes time to shift our mindset, right, and to develop more mindful shopping habits.
Mm.
But even small changes can make a big difference.
So what are some practical steps we can take to make our wardrobes more sustainable?
You know, start by taking inventory of what you already own.
Okay.
See what you can repair or repurpose.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you can dye that old t-shirt
Yeah.
or turn those jeans into shorts.
Right.
Get creative.
It's like a fashion DIY project.
Help.
I love it. What else?
Think before you buy.
Mm-hmm.
Ask yourself, do I really need this?
Okay.
Will I wear it more than once? Is it made from sustainable materials?
Mm-hmm.
Is it ethically produced?
Right.
Taking a moment to consider those questions can help you make more informed choices.
So it's about being mindful
Mm-hmm.
and intentional
Right.
with our shopping habits.
Yeah.
It's about slowing down.
Mm-hmm.
And really thinking about the impact of our choices.
Exactly.
Okay.
And remember, sustainable fashion isn't just about the clothes themselves. It's about the entire life cycle of the garment.
Right.
How it's made, how it's used,
Yeah.
and how it's eventually disposed of.
So it's like a holistic approach to fashion,
Mm-hmm.
considering the entire journey of the garment.
Precisely.
Right.
And it's about making choices that are good for the planet, good for the people who make our clothes,
Yeah.
and good for our own personal style.
I love that. It's like we're taking this whole dressing for success concept
Right.
to the next level. We're not just dressing for ourselves, we're dressing for a better world.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Oh, wow.
It's about recognizing that true style goes beyond the superficial. It's about making conscious choices
Right.
that reflect our commitment to a more sustainable and ethical future.
So we've gone from decoding the rules of power dressing to redefining what dressing for success means
Right.
in a modern, sustainable world.
Yes.
It's been quite a journey.
It has.
Right.
And it's exciting to see how the conversation around fashion is evolving. You know, it's no longer just about looking good. It's about feeling good about our choices and the impact we're having on the world.
It's like we've unlocked a whole new level of style consciousness.
Absolutely.
Right.
And it's a journey that we're all on together.
Yeah.
You know, we're all learning and growing and making more conscious choices every day.
So what's the key takeaway for our listeners? How do we navigate this ever-changing world of dressing for success
Right.
without getting lost in a sea of outdated rules or conflicting advice?
The key is to approach it with a sense of self-awareness
Okay.
and intentionality. Understand your personal style.
Right.
Consider your audience and context.
Yeah.
And choose clothing that aligns with your goals and values. And don't forget the importance of sustainability.
So it's not about following rigid rules, but about being thoughtful
Yeah.
and making choices that reflect who we are
Right.
and what we stand for.
Precisely. It's about embracing the power of visual communication
Yeah.
and using it to our advantage in a way that feels authentic and empowering.
And it's about recognizing that our clothing choices can have a positive impact on the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's about making a statement, not just with our clothes, but with our actions. Right.
It's about using fashion as a force for good.
So we can look good, feel good, and do good all at the same time.
Exactly.
Right.
It's about finding that sweet spot where style, sustainability, and ethics intersect.
It's like a style trifecta.
Yeah.
Now, we haven't talked much about how Molloy's advice was geared toward women, navigating a male-dominated workplace.
Right.
He had a lot to say about how women should dress to be taken seriously by men, and some of it hasn't aged well at all.
You're right.
Right.
A lot of his advice, while intended to be helpful, was based on the limited and often biased perspective of the time.
Right.
He had this idea that women needed to downplay their femininity and adapt to men's expectations in order to succeed.
Like that whole thing about avoiding sexy clothing to gain respect.
Right.
It's like he was saying, don't be too distracting, ladies. Just blend in with the guys.
Yeah.
Right.
It's definitely problematic when viewed through a modern lens.
Yeah.
Thankfully, the conversation has evolved.
And the focus has shifted toward empowering women to express themselves authentically, regardless of what men think.
So it's no longer about conforming to men's expectations, but about embracing our own individuality and power.
Exactly.
Right.
It's about recognizing that women can be both powerful and feminine, and that they don't have to choose between the two.
It's like we're reclaiming our style and using it to break down those old stereotypes.
That's a powerful way to put it.
Yeah.
It's about using fashion as a tool for empowerment and self-expression.
So we've come a long way from those restrictive rules of the past. We're creating a new definition of dressing for success.
Right.
One that's inclusive, authentic, and sustainable.
Absolutely. It's an exciting time to be exploring the world of fashion and to be using our clothing choices to make a positive impact on the world.
And who knows, maybe one day we'll see men rocking mittens in the boardroom.
Now, that would be a fashion revolution.
Right. Mittens in the boardroom. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
What would Molloy say? But seriously, we've covered so much in this deep dive, from the history of power dressing to its modern evolution. It's amazing how this concept has shifted from, like, rigid rules to personal expression. But we still know people judge a book by its cover.
Yeah, it really highlights how clothing is so much more than just fabric.
Right.
It's a form of communication, a reflection of our identity. It's even a tool for social change.
Speaking of change, one thing that our sources didn't explicitly touch on, but I've been thinking about, is the idea of dressing for success in different cultures.
Okay.
So do you think these concepts are universal, or are they more culturally specific?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's definitely something to consider. While the basic principles of visual communication might hold true across cultures,
Uh-huh.
the specific interpretations and expectations around clothing can vary so widely.
Right.
What's considered professional or appropriate in one culture might be completely different in another.
So it's like another layer of
Yeah.
complexity. Like we need to be aware of not only the industry and the situation, but also the cultural context.
Exactly. It's about being sensitive to
Yeah.
those cultural nuances
Right.
and adapting our approach accordingly. For example, in some cultures, modesty is highly valued,
Right.
while in others, it's more about expressing individuality
Yeah.
through bold colors and patterns.
So it's not about having one right way to dress for success, but about understanding all those different cultural codes
Mm.
and using that knowledge to communicate effectively.
You got it. It's about expanding our understanding of what dressing for success can mean
Mm-hmm.
in a globalized world.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into dressing for success, I think we can safely say that the rules have changed, but the power of visual communication remains.
Absolutely.
So what are some key takeaways our listeners can apply to their own lives?
Be mindful of the message you're sending with your clothing.
Mhm.
Your clothes are speaking volumes even before you introduce yourself.
Yeah.
Think about the image you want to project. Make intentional choices that align with your goals.
So it's not about blindly following trends, but about being strategic and thoughtful with our style.
Exactly. It's about understanding the unspoken language of clothing and using it to tell your story.
And remember, there's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Right.
What works for one person might not work for another. It's about finding what feels authentic and comfortable for you.
Absolutely. Embrace your individuality and let your personality shine through your clothing choices.
Don't be afraid to experiment. Try different styles, colors, textures, until you find what makes you feel confident and empowered. And don't forget the importance of sustainability.
That's right. Choose clothes that are made ethically and sustainably, and consider the impact of your choices on the environment.
So whether you're rocking a power suit or your favorite pair of jeans, make sure you're wearing it with confidence and a smile.
Yes. That's the key to true style. It's about owning your look and letting your personality shine through.
And on that note, we'll leave you with one final thought to ponder. We've talked a lot about how clothing can influence how others perceive us. But what about the flip side? How does our clothing affect how we feel about ourselves?
That is a fascinating question.
Yeah.
Can a well-fitting outfit boost our confidence? Can a bright color lift our mood? Can dressing for the role we aspire to actually help us achieve our goals?
It makes you wonder if there's a deeper connection between what we wear and how we feel, like a mind-body connection through clothing.
That's definitely something to explore further, but for now I encourage you to pay attention to how your clothing makes you feel. Does it empower you? Does it restrict you? Does it reflect who you truly are?
Maybe, just maybe, the real power of dressing for success lies not just in how others see us, but in how we see ourselves.
That's a powerful insight, and it's a reminder that true style starts from within.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into dressing for success. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into a new and intriguing topic.